The music room at America's Got Talent was never meant to feel like this. It was usually loud, chaotic, filled with laughter, rehearsals bleeding into one another, contestants nervously warming up their voices, producers rushing through halls with headsets pressed tight to their ears. But on this particular afternoon, everything felt different. The air itself seemed to pause as Flage walked inside, her footsteps soft against the polished floor, her shoulders squared but her eyes carrying something deeper than nerves. She wasn't just preparing to sing. She was preparing to relive something. Flage had grown up with music in her blood and pain in her bones. Long before she ever dreamed of standing in front of judges like Simon Cowell, her life had already been shaped by loss. Her father, a respected rapper known for his lyrical honesty, was taken from her when she was still a child. The world remembered headlines. Flage remembered nights when the house felt too quiet, mornings when her mother's strength looked like exhaustion, and questions that never had answers. Music became her refuge, not because it made the pain disappear, but because it gave the pain somewhere to go. As she adjusted the microphone stand in the music room, a producer gently asked if she was ready. Flage nodded, but inside, she wasn't sure anyone could ever be truly ready to sing from a place this raw. She had chosen Ready or Not for a reason. It wasn't just a song. It was a declaration. A warning. A reminder to the world that she was here, shaped by tragedy but not defined by it. She knew that if she sang it the way she felt it, there would be no hiding. The judges were not present in the room yet. This was a rehearsal, a final run-through before stepping onto the AGT stage. But Simon Cowell had a habit of walking in unexpectedly, especially when he heard there was something special happening. On that day, he paused outside the door as soon as the first low notes drifted through the hallway. He didn't know who was singing at first. He only knew the voice carried weight. Flage began softly, her tone controlled but heavy with intention. The words flowed like a confession whispered to the walls. Each line felt personal, as if she were speaking directly to someone who could no longer answer back. The music room, usually alive with movement, slowly emptied as crew members stopped what they were doing and stood still. No one told them to. They just felt it. As the verse built, Flage's voice grew stronger, not louder, but more certain. There was a quiet confidence in the way she delivered each word, a sense that she wasn't asking to be heard, she expected it. Her eyes closed briefly, and when they opened, there was something fierce in them. This wasn't a performance for applause. This was survival set to rhythm. Simon pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. No one noticed him at first. He stood near the back, arms crossed, his usual expression unreadable. Simon had seen thousands of performances. He had heard every type of voice imaginable. It took a lot to truly move him anymore. But something about this moment felt different, and he knew it instantly. Flage reached the chorus, and that was when the room truly changed. Her voice cut through the space with a sharp honesty that made it impossible to look away. The words Ready or Not landed like a challenge, not just to the industry, but to the world that had underestimated her. It was as if she were saying that pain had already prepared her for anything that could come next. Halfway through the song, something unexpected happened. Flage's voice cracked for just a fraction of a second. The room tensed. For most performers, that tiny break would have been a mistake. For Flage, it became the most powerful moment of all. She didn't stop. She didn't restart. She leaned into it, letting the vulnerability breathe. The crack turned into strength, and the strength turned into fire. Simon uncrossed his arms without realizing it. His eyes never left her. He wasn't judging technique anymore. He was listening as a human being. He later admitted that in that moment, he forgot he was Simon Cowell. He forgot about ratings, contracts, and critiques. All he saw was a young woman standing in her truth, fearless and exposed. As the final verse approached, Flage took a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her chest. The words became sharper, more direct. There was anger there, but also forgiveness. Loss, but also hope. She wasn't singing about being broken. She was singing about being unbreakable. The last note hung in the air long after her voice fell silent. No one clapped. No one spoke. The music room was completely still. It wasn't awkward silence. It was reverence. The kind of silence that follows something real. Flage opened her eyes and looked around, suddenly unsure. She hadn't expected this reaction. She had prepared herself for criticism, for notes, for adjustments. What she hadn't prepared for was the absence of sound. Simon finally stepped forward. His face was softer than anyone had seen it in a long time. When he spoke, his voice was low and careful, as if he didn't want to disturb what had just happened. He told her that performances like that were rare. Not because of the voice, but because of the courage it took to sing like that. He said that she didn't just perform the song, she lived inside it, and everyone in the room felt it with her. For Simon Cowell, a man known for brutal honesty, those words carried enormous weight. Flage listened quietly, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. She hadn't come looking for sympathy. She had come looking for truth. And somehow, she had found it. But the twist didn't end there. Later that evening, as Flage prepared for her official AGT performance, doubts crept in. The weight of expectations pressed down on her harder than before. What if the magic of that rehearsal couldn't be recreated on stage? What if the silence she earned in the music room turned into indifference under the lights? Just minutes before she was called to perform, she received a message from her mother. It was short. It simply said, "Your dad would be proud of you for telling your story your way." That was all she needed. When Flage finally stepped onto the AGT stage, she wasn't chasing a moment anymore. She was carrying one with her. The performance that followed echoed what had happened in the music room, but this time, millions were watching. Judges leaned forward. The audience held their breath. And once again, when the final note faded, there was silence before the applause exploded. Simon Cowell didn't speak immediately. When he did, he admitted something he rarely shared. He said that music at its best doesn't just entertain, it connects, and that Flage had reminded him why he fell in love with music in the first place. For Flage, that moment wasn't about validation. It was about release. She had taken her pain, her past, her questions, and turned them into something powerful. Something unforgettable. And long after the lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling, people continued to talk about that performance. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. Because it proved that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand still and let the world hear who you really are.